Mr. Speaker, I draw attention to my entry in the register. Can I just say from the beginning that no Chancellor, I suppose, has faced this kind of crisis in certainly living memory, and I do think the Chancellor has, by and large, navigated his way through this with some particular skill generally over the last year and supported those who need support as much as he can. Of course, the bill, as a result of that, underpins all of this particular budget. Some £407 billion will be spent by the end of next year, and an eye-watering deficit of over £250 billion has set out in the budget that he has just produced. This clouds every single judgment, but the key point I want to make in all of this, and I agree with my right honourable friend who spoke just earlier, the key thing is we mustn't lose sight of the reality of the need for growth throughout all of this. If we forget that, then we fall back onto the idea that we will somehow get through this. And I think the OBR's forecasts of growth should make us sit up and look very carefully at that, because I worry that the level of growth past the year after next is really very low from where we start now. And if we can't grow faster than that, it says a huge amount about some of our policies. So I would remind my right honourable friends on the Treasury bench that growth is the number one reality for us now. And that's why I was somewhat concerned about some of the issues, and I want to come back to those. But the things I did like, which I did think fed towards that idea of growth, with the idea of the super deduction tax relief to kickstart business investment, this is the right kind of thing to do. It is encourage businesses to bring their money back in, to invest in the UK. And also the news about the free ports, I think, is very, very good indeed. I would hope the government will have time to review the corporation tax rate and be very careful about the effect of that further down the road. And I note the Chancellor has given himself some time to look at this very carefully. But I do want to say that the issue really here is that sometimes we compare productivity across countries, and I would give a warning about this, and I don't know why the Treasury hasn't done more work on this. No two countries compile productivity rates at the same level. So, for example, in France, they don't have the public sector in their productivity rates. They only have the private sector. And that means comparisons are often apples with pears. So our problem in the UK isn't productivity, because the London and the South East have the highest productivity in the whole of Europe. Our problem is regional productivity. No other region of the UK meets the average for the UK in productivity. And if nothing tells us more than anything else, our problem, which is why actually putting stuff and building things in the sense of productivity in the north and in the Midlands is critical, and into places like Wales as well, is absolutely critical, is that single fact, which is our productivity around the country does not match the one level of productivity. Far too concentrated in London and the South East. And I agree with those that have said already things like tax credits, R&D tax credits are really important, and I would stress that is a very good idea and a policy the government has to push forward on, because it encourages greater growth. Remember, so many of our technology advancements are done in universities these days. We've got to maximise that. And deregulation, and I'm going to come forward with some of those plans shortly, but I think there are huge scopes for us to release some of those businesses by deregulating some of that. Now, I want to draw to a close on a couple of points. I want to make the case for the government to review the universal credit money. The reason for that is because universal credit is not a flat payment. It is a dynamic process. It is aimed at helping people back to work. So in truth, even if you invest the £6 billion in universal credit, as you get more people back to work, of course, the cost of that falls because they're back at work and they're paying taxes. And this is the critical bit that I don't want it compared to the furlough scheme. Furlough scheme is a very different item. This is about getting people back to work, and therefore they pay more. And I do recommend to my right honourable friend that he, to his colleagues, says they need to think very carefully about that, because money was taken out of it some years before, and it needs that investment back in it. That was how it was intended. And the one last point I want to conclude on is the 0.7% on overseas aid. I understand the government's issue on this, and I recognise their problem, and I hope they will keep this under review. The one point I want to make is, as we move away from certain countries, places like China will move in. And their money will come with serious, serious problems. And they will demand more dictatorial government. You only need to look at Burma to see what's going on when China supports countries. And I just raised that as a policy point that the government may want to think about. But overall, I say to my right honourable friend and to the government, this has been a good budget, but a budget that needs to buy a bit of time to think carefully. But growth, growth, growth is the most important thing in front of us now.